Great.
So yeah, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Of course, my pleasure. I'm glad. It's really cool to talk to you and see how much ambition you have. So that's awesome. Yeah, let's. You want to jump in?
Yes, that was just me.
Here to hear your questions. I like this.
All right, so I'm going to start off with thank you for doing this interview again. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to start off with some Tourette questions here. So early on in your childhood, about 10 years old, your Tourette's and OCD symptoms started popping up. How did Tourette's affect your life as a kid?
It was strange because I still had some really cool friends, and I was outside all the time, running around, riding my bike, doing the crazy things that kids do, and school was starting to become a challenge, but it wasn't yet that. And then the tics were obviously very weird for me. I didn't know what was going on with my body, but it was just this kind of thing that I never really sat at home and pondered it, if that makes sense. I was just kind of like, all right, this is weird, feels different, but I wasn't able to like kind of compartmentalize as a kid. I just kept being a kid. Played loads of sports, excelled at sports at a young age. Didn't really get made fun of too much. So like it wasn't this massive thing. It still was odd for me. I had to learn what was going on with my body and my brain, but it was more so for my family, for my mom. Like, what's going on, right? Like something's different here, and we need to figure that out. So maybe I was able to focus on just being a kid because my mom was so strong and she shouldered it all.
Yeah, and then so I recognize there you said you weren't bullied too much, and it's really weird because I was later on, I had to take a tacking class. That was my last day of school. But before that, it was rare that people noticed it. When they did, it was a little weird, but it was never really like making fun of me or anything.
Good.
But then, so you said in your book that your tics showed up when you were 10. And what were some of your tics then, and what are some of them now?
Then it was, I think, at the onset, considering when the onset was, and then puberty hitting shortly thereafter, kind of all over the place. There was eye and shoulder movement and clearing of throat, sniffling of the nose, everything. Probably I changed every 3 months or so, and then it changed so fast, and that was then. Now it's I'm more clear my throat, neck movement. That's kind of like where it's been.
Yeah.
And so that was me. And so I kind of I liked the fact that as I got older, there was longer between them changing. When they change so often, it was like you're trying to get used to them, and it's like that's more frustrating than anything. I've had very similar tics for the last decade, and I'm like, okay, I can handle that. It's no big deal. I'll deal with it, and we'll figure it out, and then I'll keep moving. And so that's been the helpful part.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give to people with Tourette's watching this interview?
Well, the hard part about TS is that it's so different for every person, right? It's there's so many similarities, but yet every case is different. And I kind of feel like the best advice that I've started to give is taking ownership of this of TS, but allowing yourself to quote unquote be selfish. And what I mean by that is I found a good way about 10 years ago, and I just said, I'm having a bad day. I'm having a very difficult time with my tics today. You know what? I'm going to go in my room. I'm going to go in my office. I'm going to sit on my couch, and I'm going to take some time for Tim. And everything else for this hour or 2 hours or day is going to take a backseat. And I'm going to focus. So because if I'm having a challenging day and now I need to make everybody, I need to do for everybody else, and I have to make everybody else happy, that's just going to give me more anxiety, and I want to kind of come off of that curve and settle down, allow my brain to calm down and my body to calm down. And so that may be for 5 minutes of quiet time, maybe for an hour. Again, it's going to differ. But the advice I give is allowing yourself the time to be by yourself and to allow your tics to, settle.
Yeah. And so you also have OCD with that. And that started showing up at the same time as Tourette's. You started picking up pine cones and rocks and putting them in your bag.
Yeah.
How did you deal with these things, and did you do anything to stop them?
Well, interestingly enough, as a kid, that was my brain was telling me to do that. I didn't ask other people what their brain was saying, but that's what my brain was telling me. So when we talk about what's normal, that was normal to me, So it was like, yeah, I went back and picked up the rock because that's what I was telling myself to do. Like, it didn't seem out of the ordinary. Now, other people might have thought it was out of the ordinary, but it wasn't for me. So I didn't think too much of it. Obviously, I knew that it was somewhat debilitating. I knew that it got to a point where I'm like, it'd be better off if I could just walk home normal. And so I tried to tackle it that way, but still, it was pretty serious as I went through my teenage years. As I've gotten older, my OCD has gotten much, much less because I've gotten a grasp on the world around me, around my own, how my own brain and body works. And so that's been helpful. It's still there. I think, we all have a little tendency of it. And those of us who have been diagnosed with OCD have a lot bigger tendencies. But I've been able to kind of slow that down a little bit just through experiences.
Yeah. And so another question I have about Tourette's is, so Anthony Irvin said it keeps him on edge. It helps him when he's swimming. Me, broadcasting, it's talent. Sure. One of the doctors talked to your mom. He said there's a flip side to Tourette's, which I fully buy into as well. My brother, he has Tourette's. He's really good at gaming. Every single game, it's insane. For you, it's goalkeeping. Can you give us some examples of how Tourette's can help you in the goal?
Yeah, well, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think that there is a I call it like a magical power, right? There's some there's science behind it, but I think it's our magical power. It's like, where we feel like one thing, having TS, it's kind of like, it's almost a problem. There's somewhere else in our world, gaming, swimming, concentrating, art, piano, soccer, whatever it is. There's a level where we excel beyond, and so. Yeah, I just always kind of, with my tics and with how I felt, the one thing I've always noticed is when I cross the line and the lights come on and the whistle blows, I am so uber focused. It's like I can tick and twitch and cough and clear my throat, and it's almost like it's not even happening.
Yeah.
Because the game is so highly intensive, and there's 30, 40, 50, 60,000 people, and there's a bunch of players running around, and you're screaming and yelling and running, and there's just so much going on that, for once in my world, my TS is not even on the list of priorities. No one cares about it, right? And so that's kind of where I felt like my magical power was, just my ability to hone in and focus on the game without any care or even notice of my TS.
And so your protector, as you say in your book, was your older brother Chris growing up.
Yeah.
Can you explain what he meant to you as a kid and what it's like to have an older brother like that to be there for you?
Yeah, I think obviously older brothers are awesome. They kind of keep you in line, but as you grow up, you have someone to look up to, and someone who is particularly with having TS, and he didn't. He was a couple years older and never really let anybody say a bad word about me, and always made sure I felt loved and protected. And so. That's always a special relationship when you have an older brother.
Yeah, and so Tim Mulqueen, now your head coach, and used to be Rutgers goalkeeping coach. So your mother worked up $25 for you to go to one session, and then he offered to coach you for free because he saw your potential. And what did he mean to you growing up like Chris, and then how did he help shape you into the goalie you are today?
Yeah, he told me everything I knew, at the time, and he was just someone who took a liking to me. He was someone who noticed my ability, but beyond that, I think other people had ability too. He just noticed it at a very young age and looked after me, and by looking after me, again, didn't charge me money to train me, and making sure that I was doing good in school and staying on the straight and narrow, outside the classroom. And when he would coach, because he liked me, like he never like let me off the hook. He was always more demanding of me than he was of the other people, and so he just taught me a lot of lessons, life lessons, as I was growing up. And then beyond that, once I was no longer under his wing, and I went to England and all those type of things. He was still the same person. We became close friends, and we had an ability to talk about the game and talk about family and all these things, and so that was pretty special.
Yeah, and then so you started your organization, Howard's Heroes, where you have kids with Tourette's come in and they get to hang out with you before and after games. What does Howard's Heroes mean to you, and what is it like to be able to give those kids these experiences that they'll remember for a lifetime?
Well, it's Howard's Heroes started because I was inundated in a good way with so many requests for signatures and meet and greets and all these different things, which are hard to accommodate all of them. But one thing we thought we could do was certainly give the opportunity, because there's something special about being at a stadium and seeing a game and the live aspect of sports. And so we wanted to kind of cater to that side of it and give kids with TS and families an opportunity to see me on that stage, and then also have some quality time away from the lights to chat. And it was kind of just a figment of our imagination, and then we offered it up to, as you said, the Chicago Fire, and Philadelphia Union, and Dallas, and all the other teams around the league, and they jumped at it, and they were so wonderful and accommodating. And so even when I went on the road, we were able to offer it to people in away markets. And what I've learned from it is that people get a chance to meet me, which is special to them, but I think it's very special for me to hear their stories, because obviously we share a similar path, and I'm just so encouraged by and motivated by their stories and the things that they're doing at a young age, which I couldn't even do, that I was afraid to do, or I didn't have the wherewithal to do. And so, again, it's inspiring for me to continue on this journey. And I say all the time, I want to be a voice for the voiceless. And until someone has enough tools and knowledge to advocate for themselves, I want to keep banging on that drum and letting people know what TS is, and trying to inspire others. So
now on more to your soccer career. You started off with the New Jersey Imperials, the minor league equivalent to the then New York Metro Stars, now the Red Bulls. You worked your way up to the Metro Stars, and you mentioned in your book you got to see Tony Meola as a kid when he was a goalie for the U.S. national team. And then he was your teammate there, the starting goalie at the time for New York. What did you learn from him as a keeper, and how did it help you in your career?
Yeah, Tony was everything in U.S. goalkeeping, and I was just a young kid, and he was someone who I had posters up on my wall, and wanted to have his jersey and buy his gloves, and he was everything. And so I was pretty starstruck, being around him. And Tony was amazing to me. He took me under his wing. He looked after me. Never let me pay for a meal. Showed me the ropes, and but he was tough on me too, and I'm appreciative of that. He never gave me anything. He always pushed me to be better. Anytime he thought I was getting too high on my horse, he knocked me down, and it taught me a lot of lessons and allowed me to stay humble. And I appreciate those times, because he's he goes down in history as one of the greatest U.S. goalkeepers of all time. And so the fact that I was able to, one, learn from him, that he gave me that time and that love, and then that we were able to remain close after the fact, that he's pretty special to me.
Yeah, and so you mentioned he'd just fire rockets at you when you were in the goal as an 18-year-old. And you earned his respect with a point-blank save, terrific first game with the Metro Stars. You carried a 133 goals against average in the MLS, and then Man United was interested in you. They saw you play in Houston, and then they wanted to sign you, and they did in 2003. What was the transition to England like for you?
Pretty incredible, scary, and it was an enormous leap for me at the time. But when you're given opportunities like that in life, you don't ask too many questions. You just go ahead and do it, and then figure it out as you go along, which is what I did. Um, it was a big difference for me. I went from living in a very modest one-bedroom apartment in New Jersey, where no one recognized me. I didn't have a name. I didn't have any experience to have a name that people would recognize. And immediately, I was in the newspaper, and people were buying my jersey, and I hadn't even played a game yet. And so, yeah, it's a pretty surreal feeling when it comes to when it comes to playing for Manchester United and being a part of that club.
Yeah, and so you mentioned in your book there was no room for error at Man U. Did that affect your play on the field at all?
Well, yes, but I also think what affected my play is that I wasn't the finished product as a goalkeeper. Far from it. I think I needed to learn. I think I needed to learn how to make mistakes and how to recover from that. And Man United is not a club where you learn how to make mistakes. That gets you that gets you out the door pretty quickly. And so I think that the pressure certainly affected the play on the field, which is normal for any player. But to be honest, in the end, it taught me so much. I mean, it taught me so much about myself and my character. It taught me what the game is like at the highest level, and if I were to succeed at the highest level, the type of pressure to perform under. And so, yeah, that was pretty. It was pretty eye opening, but it was also, there was also the lessons that I learned were not in vain. The lessons I learned allowed me to push on and have a really good career.
Yeah, and so you got to have that opportunity to play for one of the most popular clubs in the world under Sir Alex Ferguson, one of the greatest managers or coaches of all time. Just explain what most of that experience was like for you to be able to play for a club that most kids and people, soccer players even, dream about playing for.
Scary, Sir Alex Ferguson is yes, one of the greatest managers of all time, and I was lucky to have been on his teams for 3 years. And I often say I wish I wouldn't change it, but if I could, I would love to have been much older when I got to Man United, so I understood more of the culture and had a bit more about me that I could share myself with the club. So, but it was special. It was such a learning experience, and he's a very kind man, and I appreciate the fact that he believed enough in me to bring me to the club and keep me there for 4 years, and give me more than one contract. So that was
So Tony Cotton, the Man United goalkeeping coach, during a bad slump, had asked if your Tourette's had been to blame for that.
Yeah.
And so, how did you respond to that? And what would be your advice to people with TS in similar situations?
I responded to it in a not very nice way. I think that what happens when you have people who don't know, who are ignorant to the facts of TS, it's easy to link everything and blame everything on that. And so that's kind of where I draw the line. It was there was if I wasn't playing well, then I was big enough to own up to that. But it had nothing to do with my TS, and I always frowned upon people who didn't know anything about TS to offer that up as an issue. Because I don't think they're within their right. So yeah, I didn't respond very kindly to it, but I got on with it, and the show went on, and we moved past that issue very quickly.
So then Manchester United brought in Edwin van der Sar. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. But
yeah, that's good.
He was one of the best goalies in the world at the time. So then you got loaned out to Everton. Mm-hmm. And so explain what the biggest difference between those two clubs were.
Man United is the biggest club in the world, and Everton is the greatest club in the world. And I found a home at Everton from day one. It was very much the people's club, the people of Liverpool. It was in their soul. It was something about it that felt like home, and it felt less less pretentious and just more roll your sleeves up and get to work. And so really felt like from the second I met all the people at the training ground and all the people that worked at the stadium and the staff, it was like, yeah, this is who I am. And so I identify with the club very much from day one.
So, the manager said this is a family club. They don't really tolerate egos. The equipment supervisor, he laid out medium, larges, different socks for you to try on. In that city, there was a big rivalry between you and Liverpool. You mentioned the trash cans had to be purple because they couldn't be blue or red because then they'd be graffitied. So you got to participate in many Merseyside derbies, as you mentioned the pronunciation in the book. Just what is that rivalry like? It's the most combative, I think, is the word you use to explain it. What is the feeling in the stadium, and just walk us through the experience as a player?
It's I've been very fortunate to play in a lot of big games, and that's one that is at the top of my list. It's the Merseyside Derby is yes, combative. It's tough. It's physical. There's a lot of red cards and a lot of blood that gets drawn, and I the people of the city are so incredibly passionate. Families are divided. Co-workers are divided. There's bragging rights that go along with that, and so I got a chance to play in, I don't know, probably 15 to 20 of them, and it's downright special. And so you remember the good games, and you certainly remember the really bad games because people don't let you forget them. And so, but again, I'm just very fortunate to be a part of what ultimately becomes history.
Yeah, and so you had to have the blue Santa. I remember when you were visiting the hospital, you couldn't be red. And so another big thing that you accomplished at Everton, among many, is that you scored a goal as a goalie. So can you walk us through that moment and just what was the feeling that you had when you saw that go into the net?
It was 2012, and it was they call them gale force winds in England, and it just means that it is basically a tornado as we know it. And not quite, but it's wet and rainy and windy, and I just cleared the ball as I normally would, and I got a hold of one, and it bounced and it went in, and it was just like, it got up into the wind and into the dark night sky, and it went a long way, and then it skipped on the wet turf, and the keeper misread it, and it went over his head and went in the goal, and I was just like, I was as surprised as anybody because I thought, never done this before.
I gotta ask, I've seen the replay of the goal, but what was your celebration there?
Nothing. I was in awe. Didn't know what to do. I was a little bit, in the moment, embarrassed for the other goalkeeper because I know that that's not a nice thing. And so, but I downplayed it, and also look, we lost the game, and at the time in the game, 1-0 is great, but had it been at the end of the game, I probably would have celebrated a bit more. But I knew there was time to go. Yeah,
and so that reminded me of two things when you told that story. One, in your book, you mentioned that you were grateful that YouTube had not been invented and that game wasn't televised. You went to midfield to congratulate your teammate on a goal. Then kickoff, they put it in the net. And then with the wind, you mentioned, I remember seeing you boot some in Chicago before the game, and the wind was blowing at your goal, and it would just stop there at midfield and then just kind of drop down straight.
That was crazy. Yeah, it was so windy that day.
Yes, it made it freezing there as a fan, and cool to watch during pregame. So then, after you're now on at Memphis 901 FC. Looking back at your time at Everton, what are some of your favorite memories, and what does that club mean to you?
Everton means everything to me. I say all the time that everything good in my life I trace back to soccer and certainly Everton Football Club. My kids were very little and running around there with Everton jerseys on, and I played there 10 years, which is a feat for any football player. It's just everything about the club is home to me, and even when I go back, it feels it feels like I never left. It feels like I always walk in the stadium and think this is where I'm supposed to be. And so, again, I have a special relationship with the club and the fans and the people at the club. And so for me, it always feels it feels home. It will always be home, even though home is here too. But Everton will always be my home.
Yeah, and so you a big game you highlighted in your book wasn't just the one versus Belgium, which I'll get to later.
Sure.
You can't interview Tim Howard without talking about that. But another one you mentioned was the game at Azteca in Mexico. You guys had never won on Mexican soil ever before. You went out there, you made the Mexican players wait by staying in the locker room late. And that game you highlighted was just crazy. You guys beat them at Azteca. Just walk us through that event, and for many of us that didn't get to even watch it on TV, just what was the feeling at the game, looking back on it now?
Well, we talk about rivalries and big games, and Liverpool, Everton, and the Merseyside Derby is massive. USA Mexico is as big as it gets for an American soccer player, because outside of a World Cup, that is our biggest game. Always is. There's passion and there's a rivalry, and I always think that the other side of hatred is respect, and I think that you have a lot of that between the players and the fans and the football federations, and so there's a big emphasis on winning that game, and for us to never have won there, it's hard. It's the altitude is incredible in Mexico City. The stadium holds 100,000 people. There's not one U.S. fan in there. Sometimes there's one, but it's just a really, really, really difficult place to play, and for all those reasons. And also Mexico's a very dominant team. They're very good, and so when you put all those things together and you haven't won there, I just remember thinking, I don't have many more opportunities to come to Azteca and win a football match, and so this would be a special one. And so, being a part of that and keeping a clean sheet and scoring towards, in the second half, it was a magical night for all of us.
Yeah, and as a player for the U.S. national team, you got to play alongside many other legends, Landon Donovan, Clint Dempsey. Just explain what it's like to be able to see guys like that on the field, and Cristiano Ronaldo at Man United. You mentioned you get this weird feeling you get with, you played high school basketball against Jay Williams.
Sure.
There's a feeling that you get, and what is it like to be teammates with them, be friends with them off the field, and then see them go out there on the field, and as a player, explain what they are like on the field?
Yeah, look, I'm a fan, and I think that when I get a chance, football is very very fluid, and you don't always get a chance to stay at a club for forever and play with teammates for 10 years. They come and go. And so I've just been very fortunate to play with a lot of really talented players and watch their work ethic and be in the trenches with them. It's hard to win a game of soccer, and when you do it, you feel proud because of people you're around, because of the hard work you put in together. And so, I consider myself lucky and fortunate. Respect the other players, and then when they go off and I go somewhere else, I become a fan of theirs, and I look back on our time fondly, and I wish them well, and I always root for them from afar, and so it's a pretty special bond that players have, whether it's immediately in the locker room together or if they're at another club and you're still cheering on your buddy.
Yeah, and I remember in your book you mentioned Carlos. I can't remember what his last name is right now. Yeah, so he was on your team as a kid, and when you grew up and you were on the national team together, that's a special bond that I think of between you two that you highlight in the book when you talk about that. So now, what are some of your favorite World Cup memories?
I was very lucky to go to 3 World Cups, and I think that being my second time going to a World Cup was in South Africa. The first one was 2006 in Germany. I didn't play. Still special to be a part of a team that goes there. And then 2010 was in South Africa. I played my first game against England, which was also special because I lived in England and I worked there, and So I played against a lot of guys who I knew, and so it was special to play in that game, and it was my first game, so obviously I cherished it. And then that one sticks out for me. Obviously the next World Cup, and beating Ghana,
Yes.
in Brazil, who knocked us out of the last World Cup, and it's such a good run. We played in that tournament. We beat Ghana. We drew Portugal, who had Cristiano Ronaldo, and we played fantastic. We should have won that game. Then we lost to Germany 1-0, who were the eventual champions. So again, you just talk about how the stars align and our ability to play against some of the top teams and play really well. And then the Belgian game, which we lost, and we could have won, and we were certainly in it. And again, a special night for me personally because I played so well. But there's a lot of it's easy to have a lot of memories from the World Cup because everything is highlighted and everything is so special for the fans and the players and the coaches and everybody involved. It's like every single moment is spectacular.
Yeah, and so now I'm going to ask you about that Belgium game. So one thing I'd like to know, what is your favorite save out of the 15 that you made?
It's a good question. Probably one on Kevin Morales, who was my Everton teammate. I came out to the edge of the box. He shot it left-footed. I saved with my left foot. It was probably bad technique and probably in the wrong position, but I made the save anyway. And more than anything of those saves, I thought that I got away with that one, and I was quite lucky. So yeah, that's probably one of them.
Yeah, and then one that my guess in my head was the one where you tipped it over the crossbar, leaning back.
Yeah.
That one I've seen clips of. I was watching the game. That was insane.
It was deflected. I remember that one.
Yeah, and so now we're on to your MLS career with Colorado Rapids. I only have really one question here, and it is really, what are some of your favorite memories with that club?
Yeah, Colorado was. I spent 4 years there, and it became a very special place for me. Again, a club that I think fondly of, that I was able to make a ton of really good relationships at on a professional level. And I went into a team in 2016 that was already playing really well. And we made a heck of a run at the end of that season. And we got to the Western Conference Finals after a penalty shootout, against LA Galaxy. And it was just, Gashi scored an amazing goal that day, draw level 1-1, and then we held it down at the back and we got to penalties and we won. It was just a lot of special moments in the first year. For me, it was so fresh coming into a new city, back in my home country, and so for me there was just a lot that went into me coming there, the first year. So, and then through that, I built a lot of lasting relationships that were forged through hard work and love and determination. And so the Colorado Rapids are certainly very special to me.
Yeah, and so you've been in the MLS now. You've spent a total of, I believe, 6 seasons there. And so you've been there towards the beginning of the league, and you were there just last year. How has the league grown, and where do you see it going here in American soccer?
So excited for the MLS in so many ways. It's the league has grown by leaps and bounds and gotten so much better. And when I was playing, there was like one soccer-specific stadium back before England, and now almost every stadium has is their own soccer-specific stadium. The one or two that play in football stadiums are almost selling them out now. And the fan bases are very rabid. They're very hungry for their team. They're very passionate. It's proper supporters groups, and they love their home team and they hate the away team. That's how it should be, and it creates this really awesome atmosphere when you go to the stadium. So I think for me the MLS is just really, really on the up and up, and continue to attract really, really, really talented players from all over the world, and players who are still capable of contributing and leading the league and scoring and being the league MVP, and so that's pretty special.
So, you retired after your year with Colorado Rapids, then you came out of retirement now for Memphis 901 FC after becoming a co-owner with them. Yeah. So, what made you decide to return to professional soccer?
I love it. I love and again, I'm part of the ownership group for 901 FC, which is in the USL, and I firmly believe in the USL as a league that we compete on many levels. That the ownership groups are very strong and the teams are strong, and I believe in this league, and I want our team to succeed, and I want to help the team in any way I can. And so the fact that I thought I could still have a little bit to offer excited me about trying to move our project forward. We're trying to win football games, and we want to do that in the best way we can and as quickly as we can. And so I like to bet on myself sometimes, and so I was just seeing if I could add any little amount to the team to push it forward. So that was the thought process behind it.
Yeah, and you have been doing pretty good there. You've seen glimpses of what you looked like when you were in your prime there at 41 years old. It's insane. I watched the first game against Birmingham. The result wasn't great, but I saw these little flashes where I'm like, he's still got it.
A little bit.
And you definitely do. So now Dan Mulqueen, like I said, Mulch as you call him, is your head coach there.
Yeah.
And I gotta ask, what are some advantages to being an owner and a player?
Not a lot. No, I get to see the team up close and personal. Sometimes as an owner, you don't always get to be right in the thick of it. Just kind of help drive culture and build culture and make sure that guys are treating the club in the right way, acting the right way in the community, and certainly putting their best foot forward on the field.
Yeah, and so now, I mean, the USL, it's producing a lot of talent now. You've seen LAFC, Inter Miami coming up. These teams, FC Cincinnati had real success in the comeback. So where do you see Memphis 901 FC going and more teams in the USL?
Well, look, for us, I hope we compete. We compete on a playoff level. People talk about winning the championship. I think first and foremost, we need to be a contender every year in the Eastern Conference, getting to Eastern Conference finals, winning them, getting over the hump, and then onto the USL Cup final. That's that's a long-winded way of saying we want to be a playoff. Perennial playoff team every year. You have to give yourself a chance to win. No one wins a championship every year. You have to put yourself in a position to win championships, and so that's our plan, is to continue to build until we get to that stage.
Yeah, and so now I like finishing off my interviews with some would you rather questions.
All right, good.
Someone's knocking on the door. Okay, so I gotta wonder: do you prefer Italian or Mexican food?
Italian.
Do you prefer? Are you more of a vegan or do you lean more towards meat?
Meat.
And then, do you prefer sci-fi or comedy movies?
Comedy.
Yes, that's got to be there. So, thank you for watching. Thank you for doing this with me. I really appreciate it.
You appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Remember to like and subscribe.